everyone. My name is Cherish Hart, and I'm the Vice President of Community Impact at the American Heart Association. I'm sitting here in Renton, Washington today, and enjoying some sunshine, which I hope you are as well. And it's really my pleasure to welcome guests from across Washington and Oregon to our conversation today. This is American Heart Association's community conversation about building mindful eating, and it's sponsored by Providence Health Plan. So we're really excited to have you join us today. Before we start, just a few notes for our audience on how this works. You'll notice a Q&A icon in your menu down below. And this is where we want to hear your questions. So you can drop those questions in anytime into the Q&A. And if we don't have time to cover it, we're happy to follow up in an email with some notes on those answers. You can also feel free to comment in the chat box and stay engaged through typing in there. And do choose to share those with everyone versus hosts and panelists so that everyone can enjoy your comments. And because this is a webinar, you don't have to worry about muting or unmuting or sharing or anything else. If you don't want to, you can just sit back and relax with all of your virtual friends here today. So I'd like to start by introducing you to our amazing panelists. I've had the chance to get to know them over the last few weeks, and I think you'll really enjoy hearing what they have to say today. The first is Chelsea Warren, and Chelsea is a health coaching manager at Providence. And she believes that wellness is an integration of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And it's not just about striving for better health, but really living more fully. And I'm sure that's like what we all want, right? So Chelsea earned her Bachelor of Science in Nutrition Sciences. She's a registered dietitian and is also a board-certified health and wellness coach. So bringing lots of expertise to the table today. We're excited to have you share education and tools with us today, Chelsea. And next, I'd like to introduce Sandra Larga Espada. As a first-generation American Latina with a background in food science and nutrition, Sandra's approach to nutrition is grounded in the belief that food is a powerful tool for health, cultural expression, and connection. Currently, Sandra works as the program director for Global to Local's Food Innovation Network program. And that's a business incubator that supports aspiring immigrant and refugee entrepreneurs that are looking to start their own local food businesses. I've had the opportunity to work with the Food Innovation Network over the last few years, and their work is amazing. She also hosts a plant-based podcast and helps individuals kickstart their mindfulness journey through organizing and lifestyle coaching through her business, Unearthed by Sandra. Sandra, welcome today. We're grateful to have you. Oh, Chelsea, how about we start with you and help us get on the same page? We've all come here today thinking about mindful eating, but I like to just ground us in what is mindful eating, so we're on that same page. Can you give us a little background knowledge there?
Yeah. I really like to back up a little bit and talk about the word mindfulness, because that is a word that's being thrown around and it's becoming more commonplace. So to be mindful, you might think of being more aware or being more present in the moment. But I really like Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness. He's a famous author, and his definition is mindfulness is an awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And I like that thorough definition because when we apply it to mindful eating, it creates a little bit more depth. So a lot of us struggle with our eating patterns. So maybe we have an inner critic that comes out that tells us that we're eating too much. There can be a shame and blame cycle. So when we apply this definition to mindful eating, we can be non-judgmental and have that beginner's mind and open ourselves up to new experiences with eating and break free of some of our patterns. So yeah, I do too. And mindful eating is very similar to mindfulness. So it is slowing down that process, becoming more aware of how our hunger. So where do we feel that hunger? Is it in our stomach? Is it in our mind? it's enjoying the eating process. So it's engaging all our senses, looking at our food, touching our food, smelling our food, kind of observing how that food tastes when we actually put it in our mouth. So there is quite a process, and that process of also choosing what food we eat. So we can even deepen it even more by paying attention to where our food comes from and making intentional choices about what ends up on our plate. And this is a hard thing to achieve. So on a high level, it makes total sense to kind of slow down the process, really enjoy our eating. But many of us are really busy. We juggle a job, a house, a family. Maybe we eat in our car. I admit I eat in my car sometimes. I eat when I'm prepping dinner. So it is hard to do when we're juggling a lot of tasks in a day, and it can sometimes feel like one more thing to do on our to-do list. But if we kind of invite mindful eating into our lives, even in small amounts, we can really deepen our joy from the eating process.
Yeah, so maybe you can touch on that a little more, Chelsea. Like, what are some of the other benefits? I mean, I know I enjoy eating. I love eating with friends and kind of but what are other benefits of this approach to eating?
Yeah, so I think of, the first one just being our digestion can really improve. So when we slow down that process, we're actually chewing our food. We may feel better after a meal. So the digestion happens in the mouth. That's the first starting point of digestion. So we can produce more enzymes to break down our food. So that is one key benefit of practicing mindfulness. It also can be thought of as a meditation. So it can be a stress management practice. So when we are paying attention to our food and the eating process itself, we're not thinking about the future. We're not thinking about the past. We are letting go for a moment. And that can really be a good reset for our nervous systems. And then also, I think of a real nice perk is that it helps us to better regulate. So we can begin to ask ourselves questions like, am I hungry? Am I full? These really simple questions that seem really simple are actually very hard to answer. And that's why this is a practice, is that we begin to learn these skills as we practice it day after day. And so that can be a great thing for helping us to regulate our overall intake. It's nice to do things like measuring your food or keeping a food log in the beginning. But as we begin to continue practicing mindfulness, we may not need to keep those things going, that we can start to rely on our inner cues to help us self-regulate. And then overall, just joy and pleasure in the experience. So everyone eats dessert sometimes. We can enjoy our food and give ourselves permission to enjoy our food. We don't need to feel shame around that. And when we slow down that process, there is a deepening of that pleasure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That resonates with me. I even think of last night where, gosh, I kind of regretted going back for those seconds, where if I would have taken some time in between, it might have been helpful.
Yeah.
Sandra, anything else you want to add just on that definition of mindful eating and around the benefits that you've seen?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with what Chelsea shared. And when it comes to mindful eating, I like to see it as an opportunity to align with your core values as well. So if you're someone that cares about sustainability, ethical food sourcing, or you have health sensitivities, making mindful food choices can lead to a more satisfying and enjoyable eating experience and just make you feel good overall. And I've also, in my experience, have seen how when it aligns with your core values, or your why as to why you are practicing mindful eating, it's easier to stick to these new habits.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that when you're trying something new, if it's not already in part of who you are, that it's always a little harder to do for sure. Now, so where I'd love to spend a lot of our time now is, okay, that sounds great. So how do we do it? What are the strategies? What are the tips that you can share with our audience today about how they can start a mindful eating practice? Sandra, how about we start with you, and then we can hear what Chelsea has to say as well.
Yes, certainly. So I like to keep it simple. And I would say the three most important things are: one, learn the basics of nutrition labels and ingredient statements so that you make informed choices. Learn the difference between what whole foods are and what are processed foods. And there's a lot of information on the web. There's conflicting information as well. So I would say just keep it simple. Learn what carbohydrates are, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals, just the basic definitions, and understand the impacts that they have on your body. And secondly, I would say dedicate a day or two of the week on planning your meals, on grocery shopping, preparing your meals in advance so that you avoid impulsive eating and making unhealthy choices. And along with that, keeping healthy snacks and treats in your bag or on the go. So that way, if you have any cravings, you can satisfy them with something nutritious. And then the most important piece is surrounding yourself with people who respect and support your food choices. So people who encourage your positive eating habits. I've been plant-based for over 2 decades, and having the support of people close to me in my life has made it easier sticking to nutrition and my core values. And it's made it more enjoyable at family gatherings and friend outings. And so I really encourage you that you surround yourself with people who are either like-minded or respect your choices in that sense.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, especially like that menu planning piece. During the pandemic, I got in a good habit of doing that and really thinking through the week. But it's kind of fallen along the wayside as things got busier and out and about more. But I do, that's a great thing though. I think I'll take away from today is bringing that back into my life because it makes things less stressful too. Chelsea, what other strategies and tips do you have for us?
Well, these are all great ones. But I would say one of my favorite is just to take 2 minutes out of every, maybe it's just a meal a day, and really practice mindful eating. So just eating in silence, slowing down the process, engaging your senses. And you don't have to eat the whole meal in that way, but that's might be a way to adopt it on a more regular basis. You can even do it in front of your computer. So maybe it's like, you're going to be multitasking, and you just, dedicate the first 2 minutes to not doing that. And then you can kind of go on with your regular day. So that's just a practical thing. I know I do that on a regular basis, just trying to weave it into my life. The other thing is, I would say, just the inquiry. That I really believe in the power of inquiry. Am I hungry? And just really asking yourself that question before reaching for food. And, it could be mind hunger, it could be stomach hunger, it could be heart hunger, it could be, our emotions can sometimes impact our actions. So it's just gaining that awareness. And if it's not actual hunger, then trying to meet that need directly, not using food. And then I would say another one that I really love is I went on a retreat over a decade ago, and it was a mindful eating retreat. So we actually ate 3 meals a day in silence, and we practiced mindful eating. And one thing that I learned was that we really eat with our minds. We put more on our plate than what we really need. So just put a little less than you want on your plate, and then check in with yourself before you reach for seconds. And just having a couple second pause can make a big difference in how much food you take in at the end of a meal. And then lastly, if you're going to eat mindlessly, do it mindfully. So be aware of when you are being mindless, and that that actually is a positive action, and any type of awareness helps us to repattern things.
Interesting. I like that last part too, because you can't always be your best self and on every day, but giving yourself that leeway to be okay with sometimes just kind of sitting back and enjoying the moment too. I have heard sometimes things, I liked your point around taking a little less than you think you want. And that, eyes are bigger than our stomach sometimes, and it's our mind versus our stomach asking us to get more. I have heard strategies around using smaller plates before too. Does that tie into mindful eating at all, Chelsea?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we like, our eyes, we want to see that plate full. And so if we're eating from a larger plate, we're not going to feel as satisfied if we see more space on that plate. So that absolutely can be a great strategy. I've also hear of people who eat with their less dominant hand. If you're one who struggles with the pace of eating, sometimes shifting to the other hand can help slow down that process, or eating with chopsticks, or, anything that can help you pace yourself a little bit better.
Great ideas. Anything else pop up for you, Sandra, through that conversation that you want to jump in?
No, I completely agree. And those are strategies that I can also start to implement myself, especially after this winter season.
For sure. It also reminds me of when you go to those fancy restaurants, right? Your what you get on your plate is so beautiful often. So it's like even using that sense of the beauty of the food and taking in with your eyes before you eat it as well, and how that can really add to the enjoyment of food as well. Well, it seems like a really great episode. I appreciate you all sharing that. Definitely some things I'll take away. Now I wanted to pivot a little bit and think about a lot of the folks in our audiences are probably working with many different populations, either through their friendships, personal lives, or through their work lives, who maybe this would be really hard to put some of these things into practice. I mean, it's hard for us, right, who have a lot of the education around these things and the knowledge. And there's a lot of people who face barriers like food insecurity, many that we work with in our daily work. And often that's due to historical, ongoing marginalization. So Sandra, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are some ways that we should and could integrate these concepts in a way that's sensitive to these barriers and really integrates cultural needs and preferences into our outreach and work.
Yes, no, thank you for this question, Cherish. It's really important that we understand the unique cultural and social challenges that these underserved communities face when we're talking about integrating mindful eating. Like you said, many of them don't have similar resources that highly educated people who have access to more money, nutritious foods, grocery stores. Some of these individuals and communities are living in food deserts. So as health leaders and food systems professionals promoting health equity, we can create meaningful impact and sustainable solutions if we address food insecurity as we're having these conversations about mindful eating. So for one, dietitians and health experts could take cultural competence trainings so that they better serve these diverse groups and really understand what type of foods they eat, so that they can appropriately provide them with nutrition guidelines. And second, I would say health leaders can collaborate with community leaders and organizations so that the health professionals work closely with those leaders who really understand the individuals in those groups. And so that they can then tailor their approach to nutrition in a way that fits their specific needs, in creating either nutrition guidelines or food education workshops, or implementing some new food access policy. It's really important to work with the communities that you're serving. And the next one would be empowering the community. So creating opportunities for the community to grow and produce their own food through community gardens or other initiatives. I know that in Tequila, we have the Tequila Farmers Market, and we really encourage diverse food leaders or food businesses to come in and sell their produce and their vegetables. And so giving opportunities to these groups to create their own source of either income or access to healthy foods, so that it again aligns with their cultural preferences and needs. And then finally, I would say addressing food insecurity as a whole. And that could be by providing healthy and affordable food options. This could be by starting initiatives like creating community pantries, and community pantries that offer culturally appropriate food is really important. I've seen individuals who are in need of food pantries come into the food pantries and look at vegetables or products that are being distributed and not know what to do with them because it just doesn't align with their cultural needs. And so it's really important that we provide that we have that awareness, and also work with local farmers to provide fresh produce. So there's various forms that we can be mindful as we're trying to integrate mindful eating and offering recommendations to these diverse communities. But it really does start with us, the health, food access, food system leaders, to start doing the work and to reach out to these individuals and understand where they're coming from, their experiences, and their resources.
Thanks, Sandra. I love that. That's good advice for many of us, for sure. So I do see we have a couple of questions in our Q&A, so feel free others to put some Q&A if you have questions you want to ask. So there's a great question that came in about what do we do about kids? I know I have a 10-year-old and trying to think about how to have her be more mindful in her eating approach. Any tips or advice that either of you can provide around strategies for parents working with their kids to incorporate these principles?
Well, I mean, I'll speak first. I think community gardens or just a home garden. I know my kids at their school have access to a community garden. There's a curriculum that they go through that helps them to try new foods and explore it and explore different flavors. And there's just naturally been a lot of curiosity that has come from that. We've tried to implement that at home too. And so they really like to try, create new teas and salads and things with herbs and try new vegetables and throw that into a soup. So that's been one way that I think just from just exploring new foods could be helpful. And then I would also say one of the things that it's kind of a game that I've played with kids before is just blindfolding them and having them try to guess what the food is. And so that's kind of a way of kind of just approaching it with that beginner's mind, that they may have a lot of judgment with the food, but when they close their eyes, maybe they're a little less resistant and it becomes this game of trying new foods. And so I know for my kids, and I've taught this before in classrooms, it becomes a fun, interactive activity. And then just, talking a little bit about the food at the table of what do you, they can even kind of rate their experience from a scale of 1 to 5. And just acknowledging when they have that neutral experience, it's not a bad thing, that sometimes you have to expose yourself to new foods multiple times, 10, 11, 12, 13 times before you begin to like it. And that's okay. So not forcing that food on them, but giving them the power to explore and continue to explore.
Definitely. And I would like to add to that, I think food education is so important. When I started my studies in food science and nutrition, I couldn't believe how much we are not taught in school and at a young age. And it's so important that kids start learning about what they're putting in their bodies and the benefits of, healthy, colorful foods, and making that experience fun and enjoyable as well, like Chelsea was saying, and just engaging them in the nutrition process, in the cooking process, and start answering those questions gently early on would be something that I would recommend.
Yeah, I think those are all great great points of advice. And I know one thing that I like to try a lot of those strategies in my family, and with my daughter too. I've noticed when she gets home from school, it's, wanting to snack. She's hungry after a long day. And even little things like setting rules around, hey, you don't just grab the bag of something, whatever it might be. You take out parts of what you want and you start with that. And because otherwise you're just not even thinking. And the next, the same kind of advice we take for ourselves as well.
Right. Not eating from the Costco bag,
Yeah.
measuring it out into a bowl. Yeah.
For sure. Well, we're about at the end of our time today, but just before we close out, I love to just hear from each of you. There are a lot of things we talked about today, but if there's one thing you could have our virtual friends here walk away with, what's that one piece of advice or thing that you want them to remember after this conversation? And Sandra, we can start with you.
Yeah, I would say listen to your body. Choose the foods that feel right to you. I know that there's a lot of nutrition guidelines and information out there. There's social norms and social expectations when it comes to eating. And what I've learned in my experience is just following your intuition when it comes to eating. And again, I am plant-based, and I've learned a lot through that journey. And I've had people tell me that what I'm doing is not right, that I'm going to be unhealthy, that I'm lacking nutrition. And I've had medical experts tell me that as well throughout my life. And I think there's more awareness today when it comes to that specific area. So I would say do what feels right to you and follow your heart.
And I would say pick one mini habit that you'd like to change, or something that you want to try out and integrate into your day, and that may only take a minute. Maybe it's 2 minutes, and practice that daily for 30 days, and then maybe try another one. But sometimes it's really hard to, you get excited and you want to try out a lot of new things all at once, and it's really hard to stay consistent. So better to stay consistent and then add to that once it becomes a habit.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. Thank you. It takes a while for those habits to get ingrained, for sure. Well, thank you, Sandra and Chelsea, for everything, all the insight you provided today. I know you've given us a lot of food for thought, and we really appreciate you. I think we're putting a bunch of great links in the chat that can help you to continue this journey, information that can add to what we've talked about today. So those additional resources will be there in links. And we will also be able to follow up with that information afterwards as well. So again, I wanted to thank all of you for coming, and a big thank you to Providence Health Plan for sponsoring this event, bringing this content to us, and of course to Sandra and Chelsea. And thank all of you for being part of today. There will be a short survey as you exit out of Zoom, so it'll pop up, and we'd appreciate it if you can complete that. It takes about 1 minute, but that gives us feedback about today's event and ideas for future conversations that you'd like us to think about as well. In fact, we have another one coming up just on June 7th, and we'll be joined by some new friends who will be discussing ways to reduce stress, which is important for all of us, many of us. So make sure you don't miss that conversation coming up. There's a link to register for that event in the chat as well. So everyone have a great day and enjoy the sunshine.